So I'm going to be reading an excerpt from a children's book. It's about 7 to 9, so an early chapter book, and it's called Miss Pettigrew's Peppermint Pillywigs. And it's about a 16-year-old boy named Peyton who wants nothing more in the world than to learn how to make pillywigs. And pillywigs are a type of candy sold at a candy shop called Miss Pettigrew's Pillywigs. The only problem is she's over 80 years old. She's been running the store for 50 years, or 50-something years, and she's never hired anyone, and she doesn't want to hire him. But with a little bit of persistence and determination, he gets a job there. Everything goes well at first, until he sort of learns that the store is not an ordinary candy store, because they use magic. So this is a scene from about a little bit more than halfway through the book, when they're in the kitchen making candy, using their magic, and something starts to go a little bit wrong. Peppermint pillywigs are hard white and green candy with a fresh, minty taste and just enough sweetness. They're popular among people who suffer from upset stomachs and headaches. Miss Pettigrew's shop was running a bit low, so she set aside the afternoon to make some more. As soon as Peyton arrived from school, they set about getting ready to make a big batch. They got pots and pans and sugar and peppermint out and set them on the counter. Using their magic, they had knives chopping mint, sugar pouring itself into bowls, and wooden spoons stirring the mixture all within minutes. A big metal bowl flew over to the stove, tilted itself, and poured the mixture into a pot. It got warmer and warmer until it bubbled and boiled. Seeing that Peyton was confidently in control of the whole process, Miss Pettigrew sat down. She closed her eyes and breathed in the smell of peppermint. "Miss Pettigrew?" said Peyton, waking her up from the nap she was about to slip into. "Something's wrong with the pillywigs." She snapped her eyes open wide. The mixture wasn't silky smooth, and it wasn't boiling gently. It was oozing out of the pot, spilling out onto the stove. A gigantic bubble burst out of the pot and exploded in midair. It clung to the ceilings and walls. A couple pieces fell onto the floor, making a big plopping noise. "What's going on?" asked Peyton. "I don't know. This has never happened before," said Miss Pettigrew, staring at the sticky, gooey mess. She looked in the direction of the rag and the bottle of cleaning solution. They slowly came to life and floated up to the ceiling. The bottle squirted a few liberal doses of Miss Pettigrew's favorite lavender-scented cleaning solution on the ceiling. Then the rag began scrubbing. Soon the rag was caked in candy mixture, so another rag had to finish the job. Priscilla, who's her cat, watched as it moved back and forth, scrubbing the ceiling until it was clean. What was left of the peppermint pillywigs was cooling in a pan. Each one was long and narrowly shaped with a slight curve. They were white with green stripes and smelled like fresh peppermint. They looked just like peppermint pillywigs are supposed to look, but something was different. Something was terribly wrong. They were twitching. Every few seconds, it looked as if they were inhaling and exhaling. Miss Pettigrew slowly walked backwards, almost knocking her mug of cold peppermint tea over. She leaned against the counter for a moment, then slowly crept back over to have a closer look. The pillywigs were twitching so vigorously, they looked as if they were about to jump out of the pan. She reached her hand out, letting it quiver in the air before touching one. It was lukewarm. She scooped it up and cupped it gently in her hand. It lay still, but as she brought it closer to her face, it began twitching again. "Do you think they are alive?" asked Peyton, leaning over to have a look. I stammered Miss Pettigrew, looking closer at the twitching, turning, twisting pillywig in her hand. "I think so." What did we do wrong? Nothing like this had ever happened to Miss Pettigrew before. She had made pillywig batches that had boiled and burned. She made batches that were too sweet or too sour or just didn't taste right. But she'd never made a batch of pillywigs that had come alive. "Perhaps," said Miss Pettigrew, trying to organize her thoughts, "you used too much magic." "Too much magic? You're only supposed to use magic to help make the process go faster," explained Miss Pettigrew. "If you use too much, then it will affect them. As the pillywig squirmed about Miss Pettigrew's hand, the rest stood upright in the pan. What are we going to do with them? Asked Peyton. Well, we certainly can't sell them. I'm afraid of what would happen if I left them here alone. If people knew about my magical powers, it might ruin my reputation and destroy my business, said Miss Pettigrew. Maybe we could eat them. She put her hand up to her mouth, closed her eyes, and popped the pillywig in. It danced around, pushing against her cheeks, bumping into her teeth like it was trying to fight its way out. Miss Pettigrew spat it out and set it back down on the counter. The pillywig moved back and forth like it was shaking itself dry. Priscilla jumped up on a stool and stuck her neck out, watching it move. She stretched her paw towards it and let it hover for a moment before bringing her paw down over the pillywig. It began squirming, trying to crawl out from under Priscilla's paw, but the more it moved, the harder Priscilla pressed. Priscilla lifted her paw, freeing the pillywig. It lay still, defeated looking, and then it began to twitch and squirm again. Keeping her eyes on it, Priscilla crouched down low, jumped onto the counter, and pounced on it. She grasped the pillywig in her teeth, jumped down, and spat it out onto the floor. It lay still. Then it started twitching again, although not quite as vigorously as before. Priscilla watched it move, then pounced on it again, clenching it in her teeth. She bit and chewed it and spat it out. It lay completely still, covered in bite marks. Miss Pettigrew bent down, waiting to see if it would move again, but it didn't. She scooped it up and threw it in the trash bin. Miss Pettigrew, said Peyton, his voice sounding an edge, the pillywigs have disappeared. She turned around and saw that the pan was empty. She looked up and down the counter, behind the fruit bowl and even in the drawers, but she didn't see any peppermint pillywigs. Priscilla jumped onto the stool beside her, and Miss Pettigrew reached over to scratch behind her ears. Where have the pillywigs gone, Priscilla? She said, do you see them? Priscilla looked to the left, and then to the right, and then said, there they are, behind the sugar. Miss Pettigrew followed Priscilla's gaze and saw the pillywigs huddled together behind the sugar dish. They were still, but every few seconds one quivered, and another one quivered, and another. Miss Priscilla crouched down low like she was going to pounce again. Don't! Cried Miss Pettigrew as Priscilla leapt off the stool and landed on the counter with a plop. The pillywigs scattered. A couple remained behind the sugar dish, one dashed behind a plant, another went behind the fruit bowl, and a few ran in circles. I don't know what we're going to do with these, Peyton, sighed Miss Pettigrew. We can't let anyone see them. I'm so sorry, said Peyton. I feel like it's all my fault. Don't worry about it, said Miss Pettigrew, feeling like it was just as much her fault. Just help me catch them. Peyton and Miss Pettigrew reached out to try and grab the pillywigs, but they kept dashing behind pots and pans and teacups and bowls. Priscilla trapped two under her paw. After several attempts, Peyton managed to catch one, but Miss Pettigrew hadn't been able to catch a single pillywig. Miss Pettigrew looked around the counter, her eyes resting on a glass vase with an opening at the top, just big enough to put her hands in. If she could get the pillywigs into the vase, then she wouldn't have to worry about them running away. Okay, listen to me, peppermint pillywigs, said Miss Pettigrew in an authoritative voice that made children pull their hands out of candy jars, spin around, and tuck their hands behind their backs. I need you to all come here, she said. I promise we won't harm you. None of the pillywigs moved. Then one came forward, then another, and then another. Slowly, all the pillywigs came out from behind the jars and cups and pots and pans. They huddled together in front of Miss Pettigrew, their green stripes gleaming under the kitchen lights. 1, 2, 3 pillywigs, counted Miss Pettigrew. 4, 5, she counted until she had counted 11 peppermint pillywigs. She gently scooped each one up and put them in a vase. She placed the vase behind a bowl of fruit, out of view of the store, just in case a customer should happen to peek. Until I decide you're not going to cause me any trouble, and until I decide I can trust you, you'll be staying in there. The pillywigs stood up at attention near the front of the vase. Do you think they understand us, Peyton? Maybe, said Miss Pettigrew. A lot stranger things have happened with magic. That's it for the excerpt. writing and my process and a few other things related to writing. So I would say that my process really varies by piece, but it always starts with an idea. So sometimes I get an idea for a whole story or a general plot concept, but sometimes it's just part of a plot or basic concept, or sometimes it could even be something as simple as just an image. I don't know where these ideas always come from. I mean, I certainly take inspiration from my own life and things I've read about and heard about and seen, but I really love to use my imagination and just see where that will take me. So after I've come up with the idea, then I usually think about it for some time. I let it kind of percolate in the back of my head. And I don't write about all the ideas I have, but if I keep thinking about something and I keep thinking about it, it's very persistent, then I know it's something that I should write about. So at that point, I usually sit down and I write something. It could just be some notes that I jot down about the basic idea, or it could be a scene, or it could be a part of the story. And if I was really lucky and things went really easily, then the whole story would just come out. And then I just do a little editing, and then it'd be done. Maybe it's happened like that once or twice for a short story, but it's usually never that easy. So after I've got something down on paper, then I usually leave it for a little while, save it, print it out, leave it, and then I come back at it with a fresh, objective perspective. And then I usually try to do an outline, and then I write the story or part of the story. Again, save it, print it out, leave it, let it sit, think about it, and then try to come back at it again with another fresh, objective perspective, and then I'll see what's missing, what needs to be added, delete things, move things around usually. Sometimes I add a character, sometimes I change the ending, sometimes I might do a whole new outline and then redo it. And then once I'm happy that I've got a good draft, then I'll do a lot of editing. And I've learned to recognize for me that a lot of my pieces, time is part of the process. So if something's not going well, then I don't get frustrated. I just try to let it sit and I'll come back at it later. So because things need time, that's why I like to have more than one project on the go at once. So I'm not usually literally writing 2 different books at the same time, but I could have 2 different books on the go. So when I'm taking breaks from something, sometimes it's just a break to jot down some notes or to put the finishing touches on another story, or it could be months or like a year-long break to get completely immersed in another story. But I do like to write about whatever I feel drawn to the most and whatever is coming out easiest. And I like to write with a combination of pen and paper and the computer. I don't like doing too much editing on the computer. I like printing things out, marking up drafts, and then going back to the computer and making the changes and then doing that over again. And I know a lot of writers, well, I don't know if I have the other writers here, but I know a lot of writers do really good work really early in the morning and really late at night, but I find that I'm not either of those writers. It's usually later in the morning or in the afternoon, maybe early evening. Unfortunately, I'm usually at work at that time during business hours, so on the weekday evenings, I usually write after dinner, and then on the weekends, usually write in the late morning or early afternoons. I like to have a schedule, but I don't stick to it too much to allow room for other things, like coming here. So I've been writing mostly for children, books like this, early chapter books or short chapter books, but I also write short stories as well, and someday maybe write YA or write a novel, and I love variety. That's something I would like to continue with as I continue my writing journey, writing completely different things. And some of the short stories I've written are fairly heavy and deal with some dark or difficult subject matter, so it's nice to be able to put those aside and then write about a magic candy store and just have some fun. And one of the things I've been struggling with is getting published. Writing and trying to teach yourself how to write fiction is difficult, but then trying to put that out there and leaving it up to someone else to decide whether or not it gets published has been difficult. I think for a while I held back for fear of rejection, and then you send a few things out and it gets rejected, and then you hold back again. and then he'd send more out, and then he'd slowly get comfortable with the process. And I know when I was sending my bio to Candy for this, I almost put in something like, and at the current rate of success she's having, she just wants to get something, anything published before she dies. And then maybe like a week or 2 weeks later, I just found out my first short story is going to be published in the Dalhousie Review. It's supposed to be forthcoming soon in a special issue they have on new surrealist writing, so I'm very excited about that. Also because I went to Dalhousie along with King's College, so it's special to be in the university I went to. Yeah?
Have you gone to the Surrey International Writers Conference?
I've heard about big things about it, but yeah.
I keep telling all these
amazing.
writers to keep going every single year. That's where I found both my publishers. And you get to pitch to agents and like New York agents.
Yeah. Has it happened already for?
It happens every October, and it sells out really fast, so we can be coming out with it like in about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Where you can register. It's kind of expensive. It's about $600, but that's all your meals and everything.
So I like hearing these stories and different stories about how different people get published. It's interesting. It's different. Sometimes it's your traditional path, just the query letter or something by email or mail, but then sometimes it's things like the Surrey Writers Conference or a friend or somebody, I think, is it some writer I was reading about who met somebody on a plane or something and then they got published that way. So I like hearing these kind of stories, but just this one little teeny tiny story that is forthcoming soon, just all the work it took, all the dozens of rejections just for one little story. It's been an interesting lesson in like, determination and never giving up and resiliency, and so that's been interesting. So with all that work that it takes, working full time, trying to get published, and then always trying to do new stuff, I feel like it's important to take breaks. So I do like to exercise. I do a lot of yoga. I do swimming. Sometimes I come up with ideas when I'm swimming or going for walks. In the summer, I love reading on the beach, and I'm excited we're almost at that season where I can take my book to Second Beach or Third Beach and read there. I like movies. The past couple years, I volunteered at the Vancouver International Film Festival. I think I didn't see as many last year as the year before, but I saw about 22 movies while working and volunteering. And then a couple weeks it was like a movie marathon. That was fun. And I like traveling. I try to do one big trip a year, so I just got back a few weeks ago. I did a 2-week tour of Morocco. It's a very interesting country. It's very diverse. It's like the desert and all that stuff. I had this image in my head that's like that, but then there's also the sea and these beautiful mountain landscapes, a lot of really nice drives through the mountains, so that was gorgeous. And then a week in Paris after that, which is totally different, but nice. And I brought my notebook, just in case I came up with an idea. I didn't, but and besides editing proofs, I didn't do any work, and that was fun. So that's it. Does anyone have any questions? Yeah?
I just wanted to say, really enjoyed your story. It's very imaginative.
Yeah.
Can I just, I'm right, but I'm also a children's librarian, and so one thing we always tell, one thing that seems to be a rule of thumb, and I don't know how this happened, but the age that it's for is usually the age of the protagonist. So I was just curious if you had like a 16-year-old.
Yeah.
So if it's for 6 to 9s, had you ever thought of having like a 9 or 10-year-old?
I guess I could always change it, but I don't know if it's long enough for a 16-year-old. It's short.
No, but I was thinking if it's aimed, to me it read like a fabulous read aloud for 6 to 9s. I could totally see recommending it to families for a read aloud. But I would think if the character was more in that age group that it's aimed for.
I thought that's a good comment.
Yeah. So like have the kid 9
10 or something.
9 or 10 or something. Yeah. It just seems to be sort of the. If parents are trying to figure out who the book is for, we usually say, well, look at the age of the protagonist, and that's sort of a rule of thumb you can't go by. So.
Thank you.